I'm Mel Stewart, and this is the SwimSwam podcast. Joining me today is a very, very dear friend, a man I love very much, and I've just loved watching how his career is progressing. This is, of course, the head coach of Indiana University and Indiana Swim Club. He is also the 2020 Coach of the Year and Swammy Award winner. We have Ray Luse.
Mel, thank you for helping me achieve one of my career goals. I owe it all to SwimSwam and Mohammed Sami and Lily King. Honestly, you have a wonderful organization that has done a lot to, elevate swimming as a sport. And it really is an honor to be recognized by SwimSwam. And, really want to thank you.
I want to put this in context for you, buddy. All the Swammy Awards, the most read was Caleb Dressel's. Yours, I think, was the third most read. But you were topped by the Swammy Award for the biggest Instagram viral video. I just don't want to break it to you. Do you have an Instagram account? What's your handle?
I do, actually. It is.
I just like that you have to look it up when you don't know.
I actually have to look it up here. Where do I find that?
Here's it. You go to Instagram and you look up. This is an old person moment that is like
goodness,
it's embarrassing. I'll just say follow Gold Medal Mel. We'll just take all this time to say follow Gold Medal Mel. So drop your Instagram handle, because I do follow. I just don't have the phone in front of me. I have my.
I got it. It's at Ray Luse. That's it. All lowercase.
Yeah. So.
I stayed up all night creating that handle, by the way.
I just like that it took you a good 30 or 40 seconds to look up your own Instagram handle, which is your name. And let's frame it a different way. You came on the podcast the first time and with me, and I really enjoyed that because we basically did a breaststroke clinic, and it was fantastic. It was a masterclass introductory breaststroke clinic from you, and I loved it. So I rewatched it, but what really upset me was that I had to do so much preparation in like digging into your background, and I was learning things I didn't know. And one of the things is that you're a Rhodes Scholar finalist, graduated magna cum laude, with the degree in finance, and then I started to get a little bit like insecure because we got to do this podcast, and then you drop on me. I'm like, hey, what topic you want to talk about? And you're like, proprioception. And I know zero about proprioception. So I'm like sweating bullets, trying to prepare, reading research papers. When I did a Google search, the third Google search was that proprioception doesn't work for swimming. And I'm like, I think Ray might have a different opinion, but I did enjoy getting into that topic. I want to get into it in 3 minutes.
Sure.
Do you want to tease it? Tease it for me.
Well, I owe that the term. I did a club visit in Fort Collins, Colorado, 5 or 6 years ago when I was just getting into what we do here at Indiana. And I go, I don't really know what to call this. And I was having lunch with Chris Webb, great club coach, really good guy, really smart. And he goes, that's easy. It's proprioception. And I like you, I had to look it up. But, the definition, one definition, and I know you have your own, is perception or awareness of the position and movement of the body. So, which in swimming, if you can actually, enhance that, you're way ahead of the ball game.
Okay, we're going to spend the bulk of the podcast talking about proprioception, and that's your teaser. We're going to cover some just interesting topics right off the top. But I will say this is my definition of proprioception. It's mind-body connection, ladies and gentlemen.
True.
True.
And that was something Mel Stewart, as a swimmer, everyone was phenomenal at. You were one of the gifted people that just did it on your own.
Well, I'm excited to hear what you had to say about it because of what you shared with me in your notes ahead of this podcast. But just we have to kind of address the elephant in the room and where we are right now in history. And so you're earning this award from us, which we take very seriously. And what struck me when I read it, because and I saw the votes, I saw the tallies, I saw the analysis, and what struck me was that you were being recognized, and it never comes from what's happened in that year. It's really all the years before that. And so we rolled into a pandemic year, the worst year. We're going to have more dead than World War II. Haven't had a pandemic since the Spanish flu, the swine flu back in 1918, and yet your athletes performed. And did you have fear coming into this year? Will my athletes flatline? Will they not perform? Or did you have confidence in the base level and all those years of prep that you had done?
I always have fear. I'm always afraid that if we don't innovate or we don't do a good job, that everything could kind of go away, every bit of success. But I will say this before I kind of answer that. I think it's kind of who you surround yourself with. So I want to, recognize my coaching staff: John Long, Corey Chitwood, Emily Eaton, Luke Ryan, Delia Weber, and all the swimmers that kind of make that possible, because without them, no awards happen. And we're just as proud of, Mohammed Sami being African Swimmer of the Year, because not a lot of Egyptians, he may be the first Egyptian ever to get it. And in his country, it's a huge deal. So, it probably is sort of an accumulation of things, but I think chaos happens. It happens at swim meets. It sometimes happens to you when you're least expecting it, and how you perform in chaos. And chaos is a pandemic. That says a lot about you. And in some cases, it's a little bit easier. Like in collegiate athletics, it's been a lot harder. Like, I'm both a collegiate coach and a pro coach. And I found it was much easier to work with my pro athletes because I just had a little more flexibility. Whereas, in a university setting, you have conferences and administrations, and and they have to be careful with their risk. So, and it just makes it harder to actually do a good job of coaching. So we've done our best. That's all I can say.
Another topic that's really interesting right now is that because of the year, everyone wants there to be meets, and it appears that swimming has been. We haven't had a lot of. We report when there's infections, and they've just been tiny, because I think coaches and I think USA Swimming, I think that everybody's doing it right, but you have the semblance of a Big Ten season. It's based on what I'm reading. How was that developed? And because it sounds like there was a lot going on in the background.
We have met as Big Ten coaches since March, every single week, without exception. And we negotiated and talked. And it took months to kind of come up with what we thought we could do, at least in terms of the Big Ten championship. And as far as the dual meets go, that was really just a conference directive. So we were told we're just going to do football, men's basketball, women's basketball, try to do that, and then we'll do everything else after January 1st. So we have 3 meets. We have Northwestern Michigan, January 16th here. We'll have Ohio State here, January 23rd. Still kind of negotiating how those things are going to be, how they're going to be operated. I believe we will be able to have parents at the Ohio State meet, because it's not a multi-university event. Our facility was deemed inadequate for social distancing if it's more than one school. And then we have Purdue and Rutgers at West Lafayette, February 6th. So I think as a conference, we're trying to figure out, should we suit, should we not? Because like if you were to get an outbreak the week of Big Tens, your season's over. So we don't. It's similar to Big Ten football. We don't have much of a margin for error. And for the first time ever, we turned the scheduling of the dual meets over to the conference so that no one got left out. And so we did a survey of preferred opponents, and then they took into consideration like distance and cost, mitigation to give us a schedule. The Big Ten conference will be diving only at Purdue, men and women, last week of February. Women will be at Minnesota last week of February. So that's going to be just like the timing of Pac-12s now. So we backed it up a week to buy ourselves one more week. And then the men will be first week of March at Ohio State. All those facilities were chosen because they offer the greatest amount of deck space and spectator space. That was it.
Interesting. No, thanks for that. That was very enlightening. So has dumb question. Has the pandemic changed your goals for this collegiate season?
No.
It's all the same. Yeah.
It's all the same. It's just made it a little more challenging. And it's made me a more patient person, definitely a more grateful person. When we in the Big Ten, we were not able to coach our kids until like basically September. That was a conference rule, and I just missed coaching. I've always loved like practice. It's my favorite part of the day, but that was really hard on us all. And so now when I have practice, I am super grateful to get to coach.
Dinner with your wife and Omar, I think, should be the best part of your day.
You're correct.
Good
answer.
I was very disappointed because we weren't talking from your home, and I could see Omar, your Velcro dog, and so I had to give a shout out to Omar.
Omar is the best, and he and I we've gotten to know each other to a much more high level. And like my wife always tells me, she goes, "You don't really know that dog like I do." And now I do.
It's okay. It's good. Dogs are good during the pandemic. So NC2As, I think that we have after this year when we have so many teams that are being cut, college swimming is almost like a religion. People love it so very, very much. And I think a lot of people are white knuckling it. They're saying, can we have an NC2A? Can it be fair? Can it be safe? And, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we should be concerned about, our sport, because anytime there's a financial downturn in 08, 09, you saw a bunch of sports cut. And it's just, administrations are sort of opportunists. They don't have to be doing the number of sports they're doing. And the costs have kind of gone out of control. As far as like what we do for kids, do we really need to give them $3,000 in Adidas gear every year? I mean, we do. We're one of the lucky ones. But I'm concerned, but I will say this to coaches, that if you do a really good job of running your program and you're as successful as you can be, you give yourself a chance. So, the vulnerable ones are the ones that are, their facility, they haven't upgraded their facility, they're at the bottom of their conference, they leave themselves vulnerable. So I think as a college coach, you have a lot of control to some degree, not 100%, to what happens to your program, how it's valued by your administration. And you also have to be real careful not to cause them any trouble. Like athletic directors don't want to have to think about swimming other than, hey, great job, coach. Thanks for the good GPA. Congratulations on a successful season. I mean, here at Indiana, the Olympics is huge. They just love it. But, they don't like if somebody, steps out of line. So, and it's never been harder as a collegiate coach to manage those things. You honestly have a lot of minefields. Every day there's a fire to put out. And I think I told you this, but this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I've done some pretty hard things, some very, very challenging things. And this is one of the most challenging things. I love it, but it isn't easy.
I talked to a lot of young coaches who are coming up, and they want to be one coaches, and they want to be on deck at the biggest programs. And they're always asking me about what's going on in the background with admin. And I said, my personal opinion is ADs don't want to hear about the swim team. They want the swim team to have a great GPA. They want them to be consistent. They want consistent success, but you don't have to go out and if you want to win, it's because you want to win. They just want it to be stable and problem-free. And it seems like a lot of coaches don't get that memo.
No, it's true, but I'll give a couple shout outs in my own conference. Kelly Kramer, he saved Minnesota swimming because of the way he handled his program. Dan Ross is beloved at Purdue, and if you knew Dan in the 80s, he was in a little dungeon, and now they have one of the nicest facilities in the country, and that administration loves him. He's a great fundraiser. They'll put him in front of powerful, well-to-do alums. So there's lots of ways to skin a cat, but those are two of my colleagues in the Big Ten that have really, really done a great job. And Bill Wadley, I don't know if there was a better fundraiser, and that's why he's the executive director of ASCA now, because that's needed. Everybody's got to fundraise. Pretty soon SwimSwam will be fundraising, because United States Swimming has a dedicated department to that now too.
It is sort of the way of the world. It's what everyone does.
Yeah.
Coley was one of your coaches, and he had a great success at IU, and I think it was a celebration of sorts when he entered the SEC. And I'm an SEC alum. I swimming at Tennessee. I always loved racing against Alabama, and I loved seeing them successful. And I was really excited to see what he would develop down there. And now I'm sure you saw, as a surprise to a lot of people, he abruptly left. And I didn't know. I have a lot of emotion about that because I'm proud of the SEC. I didn't know how you felt about it.
Coley is he's a very bright person, and what he does, not a lot of people do in the sport. And it absolutely gets results. And I think that if he gets an opportunity to do that, in a positive way, things can move forward for him. But there's good, and there's stuff probably he needs to work on. And I'm sure he's aware of that. And he's a very competitive person. So I think that'll drive him to, self-improvement and whatnot. And I wish him the very best of luck coaching pros and elites.
What's interesting is I talk to a lot of parents, and I talk to them through. They subscribe to SwimSwam magazine, and I talk to parents or grandparents, and I probably talk to 4 or 5 sets of parents and grandparents, and their kids are looking at IU or they're committed, and they always ask me, my opinion, and I'm like, I said, here's the deal. I said, I think that certain coaches are great, and they expect a level of professionalism, and they expect character, and they expect it to be mirrored. And I said, this is a big moment. This is a challenge. Your son, your daughter, they've got to step up. They've got to grow. They got to grow up. And am I representing you correctly based on my experience from the national team and watching your career?
Absolutely. And I think there's a little more. I mean, here, when I came here, this had been like one of the best places in swimming, and it wasn't anymore. And they didn't even really have goals to make it that way. But I was like, well, this is, got so many more resources than the University of Pacific, where I was previously. And I was raised to have high expectations of myself and those that I work with. And I was raised with a work ethic. And those are two things that I live by. And, it's okay to work hard. John Urbanacek told me, when we were at the Olympics in Rio, he said, Ray, and for those younger people in the audience, John Urbanacek was a great Michigan coach, really arguably one of the greatest coaches in United States history. Mel certainly knows him well, and he's a beloved figure, but he said, Ray, work still works. There are no shortcuts to success. Now, you can work hard and go 3,000 in a practice, and you can work hard and go 8,000 in a practice, and everything in between. And we do it all here at Indiana now, and you have to respect all of that. But there's some folks out there these days that if they fail, they want to blame it on the coach or their parents or their teachers. And just people need to accept responsibilities if they fail, and they need to look in the mirror and they need to get back up and do a better job the next time. Because if you don't own up to what you need to improve, then you're not going to remain relevant. You're going to get left behind, be it academically, in business, in anything. And I love history. And I was just talking to one of my swimmers today, Ulysses Grant, the great Civil War general, president of the United States. He graduated near the bottom of his class at West Point. He was a drunk. He failed in business, yet he was, the guy that won the Civil War for the North. And it was talking about the traits that made him successful. And one of those was setbacks didn't bother him at all. And I'll tell you, I've taken that to heart in my life. So, if somebody's hating on me or we have a setback, I'm willing to take some risks, and I have, obviously. They've been calculated. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't, but I always do it with the best interests in mind. And I don't let it bother me. So, I think it's an honor to be talked about in SwimSwam, even by the people that maybe don't care for me, because you're relevant. You must be doing something right if they're talking about you, be it good or bad. So, before that, nobody talked about Indiana at all. Now we're sexy.
You committed the sin of being a program that threatens one or two position, and your name isn't Cal or Texas, and that breaks the covenant in the religion that is college swimming. And there's I think that when anyone's on the rise and they're successful, we oftentimes see that on the front end, and it is a funny thing. But I do find that people that are the most successful, oftentimes it is how big of an appetite do you have for rejection and for criticism, and you maintain who you are. There was a talk I heard a long time ago, and they said Moses was the meekest man in the Bible. You could flatter him, you could criticize him. It didn't matter. He was going to walk the path. He was going to keep moving toward his goal. I see you like Moses.
Yeah, slow and steady sometimes wins a race, Mel.
Proprioception. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to add something to that?
No, you're right about one thing. I don't think people want to see us go all the way to the top, but I've always gone off my gut. That's why I came to Indiana. That's why I have stayed here. And my gut tells me we're going to win the national title here. And Doc Councilman will be smiling from heaven when we do. And he was 100 years old recently, and we had a great alumni celebration, and just hearing the stories about him. This was Mark Spitz's coach and Gary Hall, and just so many of our luminaries in the sport. So Indiana's almost there. We're on the doorstep, and we're going to kick it down.
I love that. When I emailed you ahead of this and we went back and forth, you said, let's talk about proprioception. And I looked it up, did a lot of research, and I'm like, this is mind-body connection. Your reaction to me, the way you explained it to me was, I do believe this is a part of the future of our sport. Help me unpack that. How is this the future of our sport?
So Mel Stewart was a world record holder Okay, gold medalist, Michael Phelps, one of the greatest swimmers ever. Even a swimmer like Reagan Smith. And there's some people that you can throw them in the water and they're just really good. The Hungarians do this. Hungary is really good in swimming and water polo, like better than they should be based on having like 9 million people. They literally throw the kids in the water at like age 5, and the ones that swim, they move them over here and they focus on them. But I think that you talk about some people have a good feel for the water, and they feel what is faster, but that is a very rare gift. And you don't really realize that until you've coached a long time, 25, 30 years, to know, okay, if I have you, Mel, and I say, Mel, do this with your stroke, you just did it probably. But then another youngster, it's going to take 100 times changing your instructions every single time to get them to do that one thing. And if they don't do that one change, they really can't advance. So, it's so competitive in the world of swimming and coaching. There's just a lot of good people that do it. And, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, we were like, okay, well, we're doing all these pulleys. And then we decided, hey, let's get some underwater cameras. And I talked to my diving coach, and I'm like, how do I get something that is reasonable that we can afford to do? Because the first time I tried to do this, they said that'll be $50,000 a year to do what I wanted to do. We're utilizing Wi-Fi, and we're doing real-time live delayed taping, of the whole practice, covering the whole pool. And we made lots of mistakes. Like, we mounted some cameras, and that's not good because in swimming you kind of want to move around. We really couldn't get the side view because you need to be on a track, and that's honestly not real practical, trying to move something up and down because you're taking a coach away from practice. So, we finally came up with something we could just hook off the gutter, capture 2 lanes. It's live delayed, and then over time, with the help of some people in the tech world and our diving coach, Drew Johansson, we got a pretty good system now that's affordable. And it's not anything out there that you can really, go to, your swim shop, your local swim shop, and get. But if anybody wants to email me, rluse@iu.edu, we'll be happy to tell you what we've done, how we've made our pulleys, how we put together our underwater system, because we've done it affordably. Any club team could now have it. But what resistance training with a visual element does is it helps you teach that. It helps you teach body awareness, because they can see it and they can feel it better. So you can take people of different levels of talent, and all of a sudden, because of that combination of resistance into an underwater camera, and John T called it contrast training. But I was doing it for power, but the technical benefits are far greater. And I remember people telling me, oh, you can only do power acts twice a week, or it's too much. Who made that rule? I don't know. I was just kind of doing what the best guys did at the time. Then we did 3 times a week. Then we did 4 times a week, 5 times a week, 6 times a week. Now we do it every single practice because it worked. We got results, and because it was enhancing technique more than anything else. And that's
power towers?
What?
Power towers?
Yeah, well, we have a pulley system because power towers take up too much deck space.
Oh, this is the cost. I didn't know if it was just the
power towers are expensive too. My system's cheaper.
So you have a pulley system. This creates resistance. And what I'm unpacking here is that, because frankly, we didn't do it in my day. We did very little of it. I remember seeing Randy Reese do it, and I was like, "What's Randy doing? Randy's being weird." But it's a thing in swimming now. But you said something. You said, yeah, the rule was you can only do that twice a week. But
that was for a long time.
And you're doing it every day.
We started in 2015. We started to do it more. And it happened with our breaststroke group, and we talked about it, and we realized like it was kind of a mistake. And we're like, that breaststroke group's doing power 5 times a week. And, it's kind of like Bill Belichick, and his staff at the Super Bowl against the Seahawks. They could have called a timeout and it would have helped the Seahawks, but they kept the chaos going. So we've had a lot of people come to our practice and say it's chaotic, but it works. And, because it works and it allows for innovation. And our kids come up with ideas. Like I've learned so much from Lily King, Blake Peroni, Zane, Grothy, Annie Laser, just there. They're like, hey, they know where we're trying to go with stuff. We're trying to improve technique. We're trying to reduce drag. Because swimming, human beings create a lot of drag unless you're really, really good. But even Michael Phelps created lots of drag. So if you can teach athletes how to reduce the drag that they're creating when they move through the water, be it kicking or swimming, you're way ahead of the ball game. Tremendously ahead. And it's the future of swimming. And Chris Webb came up with the term proprioception, as that's sort of what you're doing. And the people that say you can't do it, down the line, they're going to be proven wrong, because I've seen it happen. I have proof.
In terms of, okay, so I understand. I have an understanding of that, but so what is it doing for? I see it as mind-body connection, and
correct.
That's a very crystallized definition. Your definition was a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Did you share your definition? I'm sorry.
No, I already shared the definition.
Yeah, it's so. So how do I move from resistance training to mind-body connection? What's going on? How am I laying down neural pathways with all of this resistance?
So we're a sport of repetition. So when you put somebody on any sort of resistance, and then you show them, then they can see in an underwater video what's actually happening. Then you have one pathway, I believe, that's been connected. So you're connecting the mind to the body. All right. And if you can do it again and again, then you can apply that to their swimming. So when we design our sets, we'll have resistance on the underwater camera, then we'll take off the resistance, let them execute the better technique, higher body position, different head position, because most people can't feel those things. You swam and you had better mind-body connection. Would you agree with that than most people?
I became aware that I understood that intuitively I knew what was going on and everyone around me did not. I was aware of that at a very early age. Yes.
And I'm just trying to give that awareness, that I'm trying to connect that in more people. And this is a way to do it, by them seeing it, then they can start to make the changes, and you can lay down those connections from the mind to the body. Okay. And you can do it quicker. So if it took me 100 times to make that change with an athlete, we're making it in 10.
Oh, wow.
It's quite a bit quicker. Okay. So that mind-body connection, it's a great definition. It's accurate. We're able to make that connection with our athletes. And the more they watch, and the ones that really do it diligently, all of a sudden they're taking less strokes, and they're going faster. Their body position is high in the water. And I'm like, look at it. You can see that it's faster, but you have to kind of tell them, hey, when your body's right at the surface, it's faster. Like when you did side breathing. So when you raise the head in butterfly, it's the heaviest part of the body. You were you might have been the first person to do the side breath, and you were trying to lift your head out of the water less, you were trying to do that. Yeah. You were trying to keep your body high, take a quicker breath with less effort, because you were like, hey, I'm going to go faster if I do that. Correct. I mean, I would assume
I was
that's why
trying.
you.
I was the first person successful doing it. A few other people did it, but it was the entire reason for doing it is because your head is heavy. But I was trying to tip my body position, so I was swimming 200 meters of butterfly downhill instead of swimming uphill.
Yep. And I'm shocked. I still see it here and there, but I'm shocked that more people don't use it that could. It's sort of a forgotten thing because it's different. It's really different. Like underwater kicking, like Burkhoff was great at it. David Burkhoff in the 80s, and then sort of stopped. And then all of a sudden people were going the whole lap, and they reeled it back in, but it didn't take as quickly. But that's something you were doing 30 years ago. And I'm surprised we don't see it more because I think it made sense. It had merit.
It's, it's funny. It's my wife's like, why doesn't Michael Phelps breathe to the side? She's a non-swimmer. And I said, it's because when he takes his breath, he's popping his mouth. It's like his lips are a half an inch. His chin is right there on the surface and his mouth is just getting a breath of water. I said, it's the same thing. I was trying to keep my head low and I just wasn't that good. So I had to swim an ugly butterfly to accomplish this. So we race with the body that we bring to the pool, and everyone has to. Yeah, they've got to do their own. So this is what's fascinating about this, and it makes me kind of angry because I feel like now we need to have a production, and we need a proprioception video on deck with you going, yeah, this is what it is. Check it out. This is how you do it. Here's step one.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. So with the butterfly, everybody thinks that we're just breaststroke here, but that's just because we have people that swim fast breaststroke. But like with butterfly, I think it's all in your torso. Okay, so Michael Phelps's torso was very long, and that's his surfboard. So the smaller the torso, things have to change. The longer the torso, the better, I believe, in butterfly. You could breathe every stroke if you want to. You could kind of breathe normally because you're riding a long surfboard, so you're at the edge of the surfboard. Whereas if it's shorter, you got to do different things. And when you look at somebody's body, you have to be really open-minded to how they're going to swim. So, that's where this contrast training or this mind-body connection, proprioception, whatever you want to call it, it's not one size fits all. It's sizing somebody up, seeing how they ride in the water, and then giving them things that will connect. They're what their mind wants them to do. Everybody wants to swim fast. Everybody wants to go to the Olympics. I have all these people sit on my couch and say, I want to go to the Olympics. Yet just a fraction actually do. But yeah. And how do you get more people to understand that connection, to make that connection as coaches or as swimmers? And I think the future of swimming is this combination of underwater video, seeing what's going on down there while they're in a resisted, while they're swimming with resistance or with a restriction. And then you're going rounds of that. So you do a little bit of that. Kids, everybody gets this. If you swim with, a parachute and then you take it off, you feel good for a little bit, but then it goes away. So we do that the whole practice. Now, you probably remember that when you would swim with a little resistance, then you take it off. You see people do that for meets because they want to feel good in the water. Who doesn't want to feel good? And we do that the whole practice. We're in and out, in and out, in and out. So we're like taking off gear, putting on gear. That's where the chaos element it happens. But, just going 20 pulleys in a row, that's just a power endeavor. But going 2 pulleys, with kicking and swimming and doing like 10 rounds of that, or, however you want to design it, it's just up to your imagination.
I get it. Because the difference between good and great is it's just that grit. And the difference between great and iconic is a level of mind-body connection. I know, like, I have this thumbnail in my brain when I see it. I'm like, that person has neural pathways that have been laid down like a super highway, and they are just ingrained. So now it's like breathing, and it is the most unglamorous, hardest thing you can do. It's just time plus effort, but I see it. It's so simple. What's fascinating to me is that when you have someone who makes this breakthrough and has this understanding about anything that they love, their sport, music, whatever it is, they're so proud of it, and they're like, I've discovered this, and they're like, hey, come see. And you're like, you're just saying, here's my email, come check it out. This is how we do it. We've gotten over the hurdle of the cost, the cost impediment, and that is empowering. And it's I can feel your sense of discovery. It's so is this something? So this happened in 15. You're like, we started doing this in 15,
Yeah.
and you've been refining it year over year. It's what have you learned in that period of time, and what adjustments have you made?
Well, I learned that, if you're under the water, even a quarter inch, especially your hips, if they're just a little bit low, you have major problems. The drag coefficient is just goes off the charts. And as so the kids that kind of swim, lower in the water, that's an issue. So, with some of those kids, we started to put on technical suits more and more and more, because I'm like, well, why swim like crap? Why swim in a bad body position? Maybe if we lay those pathways by wearing the technical suit in workout. And I got the idea at World Championships from Raspis's coach. They were suiting up like 4 times a week. And I'm like, God, that's crazy. But they weren't doing it just in lactate sets. They're doing it in aerobic sets. So some of our challenge sets, we have our distance kids doing like, their longer repetition stuff in a suit. And all of a sudden, those practices that were just slogs are now exciting, amazing. And how is that bad? And, people like Speedo are really excited because they can sell more technical suits now. And they should. I mean, you should have a couple technical suits, that you use in practice. And if you've got a kid that you want to get to be higher in the water, give them a chance. And part of it is the way you design your practice, but also, you can just throw on a technical suit, and it's not a cop-out. I'd rather compete without a technical suit, because I want to see where are we really at? What kind of progress have we made? So the hips, you got to figure out ways to keep the hips high. And then the head position. When people talk about your line, what's the perfect line in swimming? It's a streamline, right? It's that simple. So if you can add up all the time in a given race that you're spending in a streamlined position, even if it's only 5/10 of a second greater than it was, you're going to drop a ton of time. And kids like to go fast. And having a good line, spending more time in that perfect line is good. So like I use a term, eyes on the bottom of the pool. Why would you ever want to look forward underwater? You don't. You really don't. And the other thing that's really important is when people come off a wall and they're using the underwaters, the underwater kick. The hips need to be minimally in line with the head, but if you can have your head a little lower than the hips, the power per kick is going to be more maximized. And that must have to do with hydrodynamics. But when I was at Phoenix Swim Club, we had a hydraulic rope tow. And there was one at the Olympic Training Center. It was hydraulic, and it would like pull you to like 20 seconds per 50 meters. And sometimes I just put the kids on it and I'd say, just streamline. do what feels fast, because when you have a tool like that and they're gone now, like all of those things are gone because they're just, to have flags and stuff. It was really complicated to implement. But boy, they really, that taught feel too. Gary Hall Jr. would just go on that thing for like an hour, just working on his stroke. So those are some givens. Now, how you get there, lots of ways to skin a cat.
The big takeaway is if you're laying down neural pathways and you're spending all your time in the pool, and we spend enormous amounts of time that's invested in our sport, it sounds like you want to be doing exactly what is efficient with the least amount of drag, and you're bringing every tool in the toolkit to make that happen. And you're hyper-focused on it.
Correct. And there's so many ways you can do that. You do need to spend time in the water. So the programs that do a ton of dry land and maybe don't swim much, that might hold you back when you get in a 50-meter pool. But you could go 2,000 in a practice, but that practice could last 2 hours. I could design a 2,000-yard or meter practice to last that long. I think time in the water is critical. It doesn't matter how far you go necessarily, but we're a sport of repetition, whether we like it or not. You're not going to pick up a golf club and start striking the ball the same way every time unless you put in the reps. How do you put in those reps? Man, there's just tons of ways to do that, and we haven't even thought of half of them at this point. But if you got to do positive repetitions. That's what lays the pathway. And if you're doing negative repetitions, you're reinforcing those bad habits, and you're really not making progress. So as coaches, as swimmers, how can we spend more time doing things that reduce drag, that is a positive repetition, so then when we race, we can just do it. We don't have to think about it.
Proprioception. I have a feeling that we're going to be unpacking this year over year as you learn more, because you're going to make new discoveries.
It's a good debate, and people are doing it everywhere. Like Sean Smith up at the Hilltoppers, we had a great talk, a few weeks ago. And I'm just like, hey, here's some things that I have tried, that I've done. And he called me up not too long ago and was like, you're one of the few coaches that actually taught me something. You shared with me and you taught me something. But that's what we should be doing as coaches. Sometimes we sort of get wrapped up, in kind of trying to hide what we do. But I'm an open book. If you want to come watch practice, given not in a pandemic, doors always open. And I learned from those visiting coaches as well. They'll go, well, hey, why are you doing this? They'll challenge it, and you have to challenge what you're doing. And you have to be willing to go to a dead end. Sometimes the things you do don't always work out, but if you're exploring, I think good things are going to happen. And, you just make sure not to, if it's a path you don't want to go down, that's fine. Just don't do it again.
We're coming up on the end of our time because you have practice coming up. You got any takeaways, any parting thoughts?
I think that this pandemic's going to be done real soon. And I think we're all going to be better for it, certainly more grateful. And I hope we don't lose, the patience and the grace and the humility that maybe we've had to, that we've had to learn, as we kind of move forward to 2021. But I think 2021 is going to be an awesome year. I already feel positive and optimistic. But I will say, just having an optimistic mindset. At any one time, I think on planet Earth, there's 350,000 people that are 100 years old or greater, something like that. And one of the main traits is they're optimistic. They're not pessimists. So think of where we can go as a sport, and I choose to kind of live that way because, like in collegiate sports, there's a lot to be afraid of. There's a lot to, look at and say, man, we're not in a great place, but you can change that, and you can change it right up here in your mindset, your mentality.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.